welcome to the CHF Overtime Podcast. As always, Jordan DeLuciano here, and it's a special one today. Very special edition of the CHF Overtime Podcast. I feel like just yesterday I was doing last year's episode, but it's now the second time I've done this one. It is the official AAU National Championship pool play reveal show. We're going to reveal all the teams that made it, and we're going to go through who's playing who's in what pool. We got to go through Pool A all the way, I believe, to Pool H, and then not just for the Division II national division. We're going to do the two American divisions in their two separate pools. So we have D2 and D3 to get through. Last year, it was D2 with a sprinkle of D3 playing in the D2 tournament. But this year, first time ever in the AAU National Championship tournament, we'll have Division 2 going at it, and then we'll have a Division 3 champion as well. So a lot of teams, a lot of information to get through, a lot to talk about today. And I feel like time really flies. Last year, right before I was cramming it in myself, along with Farmingdale State head coach Joe Mazie, we were working on putting the show together, just making sure we got all the information down. This year, a little less stressful. Also, in fact, that I've been with the league now a full season, opposed to last year. I joined kind of late, so I've been familiar with the teams, familiar with the players, so getting used to a lot of what's going on within the league. But before I get into revealing our first pool and going through our first four teams and who's going to meet up, let's talk about a little bit about the tournament itself. We'll start off with the national division. So national division, I mean the Division 2 division. So just some people, what is national and what is American? So for the national division, Division 2, there will be 8 pools, 32 teams. Pool play will begin Friday, March 10th and finish Sunday, March 12th. The quarterfinals are on March 13th. The semifinals will be Tuesday, March 14th. And then the championship game will be Wednesday, March 15th. And now over to the American division, Division 3. It will be 2 pools of 8 teams. And we'll finish up today's show going through those 2 pools. So I'll do the 8 in Division 2, and then I'll finish up doing the 2 in Division 3. Try to keep up. So for Division 3, pool play will begin Saturday, March 11th, so one day after Division 2 starts, and it will finish Monday, March 13th. The semifinal will be Tuesday, March 14th, and the championship will be the same day as Division 2 finals, Wednesday, March 15th. So I know that was a mouthful. You probably, when all said and done, you can rewind, go back to the beginning, just re-listen to what I said in terms of the dates and who plays when, just because it was a lot. And this year's AAU National Championship Tournament, it will feature 40 teams, more than 1,000 students, 70 college games in 6 days, in the largest collegiate hockey event in North America. Only here at AAU College Hockey will you get that much happening in that short span of time. And I'm telling you, for all of you newcomers that will be showing up to the tournament, whether you be a new player, a new team, new family member, or fans, it's really quite a spectacle, the AAU National Championship. That I'm just speaking from my experience last year. Now it's going to get even better because we learned from what we can improve on last year, and we're going to intensify it and dial it up to 11. We're going from 0 to 100 to make a pop culture reference, you know? And I was coming into this, I was thinking, I'm like, no, I got to wear something nice. I wound up going with just the CHF jacket. I was thinking about wearing my old team jersey. I was inspired by Executive Director Scott Solomon when I recently interviewed him. He wore his Albany jersey. I'm like, no, why not I wear my Farmingdale jersey? But I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that because I don't want to ruffle any feathers because everyone will be watching this thinking, look at this Farmingdale guy. He hates everyone else. No. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to keep it neutral with the CHF logo right there. So I don't want to ruffle any feathers. You know, I got to try to be as nice as I can to all 32 teams in the top and the Division 2 division, and then nice to all the other teams. Can't say anything bad because if I say something negative, people might be coming for my head at the tournament. I got to look over my shoulder. You never know. So with that all being said, let's try to be nice, not too mean though, and let's get into our first pool, our first 4 teams in the AAU National Championship. Let's kick it off with Pool A. There we go. I'll give you a second. Let's take a look. Best get in. It will be kicked off by the number 1 team in the country, the St. Bonaventure Bonnies. They were undefeated in the regular season this year up until the UNYCHL playoffs, where they were upset in overtime by Niagara Community College. So a shocking upset by Niagara Community College there, knocking off the Bonnies in the playoffs. So the Bonnies went all year without losing and then wind up losing their first playoff game. But I guess it's all right, get that loss out of the way. You don't have to worry about it. All right, we lost. We know how it feels to bounce back. The Bonnies had a big upset last year, knocking out Farmingdale in their winner go home pool play game. Don't let this loss fool you as them get upset in the first round. Don't let it fool you. Bonnies are still a very good team. Owen Hughes, 11th in the league in points with 50. Mason Mago, 20th in the league in points with 46. So this is a very good Bonnies team. I got to interview Owen Hughes as well as their head coach throughout the season. So it was a tough loss in the playoffs. They were the UNY CHL champions last year. They won the conference, not so much this year. Now, going on to number 15, University of Georgia Bulldogs. They were 27-2. So 27 losses and 2 ties, led by their leading scorer, Mac Bigda. He had 44 points this year for the Bulldogs. Josh Mazzaros led the team in goals, 23 goals. They have a nice two-headed monster in net, as both of them almost had an even amount of games played in Testino and Newbold in net. Bulldogs last year were expected big things in the national tournament last year, and they were upset, and they were not coming out of their pool. I remember it was Georgia, USF, and then Alabama were the top 3 teams. I forgot who the 4th team was, but those were your top 3 teams, and it was Alabama winning the pool, and many expected Georgia, who was the top 10 team at the time, to win that pool and move on, and they wound up getting bounced out of pool play like we did last year. And that's definitely something, a message we'll send to repeat to the teams that experienced that last year. And I'm going to now mention it to new teams here. Don't get fooled by ranking and by the number next to each and everyone's name. We had a lot of upset last year in the national championship and our national championship. Farmingdale, Tampa was the number 1 team, which we're going to talk about them later. We're going to see the team. Tampa was upset in the final game. Georgia, as I mentioned, Quinnipiac, a team that didn't make it to pool play. Anyone can really beat anyone. And if you don't bring your game, you could be looking at the scoreboard in the third period, and on paper, you might see a mismatch, but you're looking at the score in the third period. Oh, wait. We're the number 3 seed, and the number 25 has us tied in the third period. That's just an example. But so don't take teams lightly. Don't think you have a walk through the park just because your number is better than their number, or you beat one team 3 times, or we beat this one team, and that team we beat killed this team we're playing. No, none of that. If you look down to your opponents in a national championship competitive environment, you will wind up on the losing end. Now, finish out the rest of the pool. It'll be Mass Maritime. They finished their season 6-11-2. They have a big win this year. They knocked off Babson 5-2 very earlier on in the season. But then they kind of just hot and cold. They could not find a rhythm. They wound up losing to Babson in the conference playoffs. They play a very nitty-gritty game, like in-your-face style. I had a chance to watch them as I called games to Farmingdale. They came to the island, and Mass Maritime very shorthanded. They did not have a long bench, and despite that, it was a very close game into the third period, but then eventually Farmingdale won the numbers game and kind of opened up the scoring. But Mass Maritime will grind it out with the best. And then to finish it out, you have number 24, Mass Maritime. You have High Point right now at number 32. They finished their season off at 13-9-1. They're actually in the Atlantic Conference. They're the one conference that hasn't has a champion yet. They start. High Point actually will begin their playoff run on Friday. They face Navy. But High Point, though, high scoring offense. They're led by Nick Sasso. He's 7th in the league in points with 53, and he had 34 goals. So he is far and away the go-to guy at High Point. But when it comes to terms of playing against the top tier team, they've had convincing losses in terms of they were just dominated in terms of the final score twice against Liberty and once against South Carolina. So they had a taste of playing those upper echelon teams, but when it came to the final score, High Point was on the bad end of things, but a good overall record as there are many games over 500, and Nick Sasso, a very good player within the league. So I'll take one more final look here at Pool A. And the game structure goes: the number 1 seed in the pool, so Bonnies, will play the number 4 seed, High Point. Georgia will play Mass Maritime, so then 2 versus 3. And then it will be 1 versus 3, 2 versus 4, and then 1 versus 2, 3 versus 4. You got that? That's the case for all the pools. Again, you can go back at the end of the show. You can listen to how I broke everything down, but every pool is the same. 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3. 1 versus 3, 2 versus 4. 1 versus 2, 3 versus 4. Got it? I hope so. Hope so. All right, so I'm going to take Pool A off the table here as I'm going to load up our next pool. Pool B, obviously. Just doing some producer work right now. Pool B, share. And should be right. Yep, there it is. Pool B. All right, take a look. Grasp it in. It'll be led off by another upset team. So the number 1 seed in the AAU will be Bonds, and the number 2 seed is the upstate champions as they knocked off Niagara Community College. Niagara wound up going and beating Bonnie's, Binghamton, and then going to the championship game after a good run. But the Niagara D2 Division 2 team soundly knocked off Niagara Community College to become the champions. Niagara University 20-4 on the season, and all but one of their 4 losses were by 1 goal. So 3 of their 4 losses were within 1 goal the whole season. So that just goes to show how good they are. They played a very difficult conference upstate. They swept the Empire in the Elmira tournament. The upstate league in general did very good in that upstate versus Empire battle. So Niagara did not make it out of pool play last year, but I had a good year last year and went from good to like much improved this year. And they really raised the bar, and they're the number 2 team in the league. Number 15 team going into nationals will be Penn State. The Nittany Lions, Harrisburg, 21-6-1. They lost the DVCHC finals just this past weekend to the University of Delaware, who teaser, a little bit of a leave you on a cliffhanger. Delaware, we're going to talk about them as well later. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. They wound up beating Liberty this year. Liberty is a top 10 team who, again, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We'll be talking about Liberty later. Penn State knocked them off 6-5 and 5-4 in overtime. They're led by the top 2 leading scorers in the league. So number 1 is Cam Moore, and number 2 is Douglas Smith, 1-2. So they got a powerhouse up front. But for Penn State, though, the powerhouse up front, they have the key wins against Liberty. Very good record with 21-6-1, but they do have a weak schedule. So will that weak schedule kind of prove and show its ugly head in the nationals? Who knows? But it's just something to talk about. Some of these teams, they have a very good record, but when we look at it in terms of ranking the difficulty of schedule, the Nittany Lions do fall closer to the middle, behind the middle of the area, but still a very good Penn State team. I got a chance to watch them last year against Farmingdale in the Nationals last year in 2022, and they put up a very good match against the Rams. Up next, number 23 ranked Fredonia State. They were 500 this year. They were 7-7. They started the season 4-0, and they kind of leveled out. They wound up having a big win this year, knocking off University at Buffalo. Again, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. University of Buffalo, a team we're going to talk about later on in the podcast. But yep, Fredonia State, not in the tournament this year, making an appearance this year representing the Upstate Collegiate Hockey League. And then Clemson rounding it out, number 31, Clemson University, 9-11 on the season. They've had matchups against Tampa, South Carolina, Georgia. So they went through the ringer this year in the CHS, but not able to get better of those matchups against the top teams, like I mentioned, South Carolina, Georgia, and Tampa. But they have that experience, though, throughout the season of playing the best of the best. So they can take that experience. They know what it takes to hang around with them, and they got to apply that because first game for Clemson, you're going up against the number 2 team in Niagara, and you're going up against the champions of the UNYCHL in Niagara. So finally, I will let that sit for a second. Pool B, Niagara, Penn State, Fredonia, and Clemson. That will round out Pool B. So we got through A, got through B, so we'll wave by to B. I'll get off of them. I'll get Pool C loaded up. Again, back to my producer work here. Pool C, loading, show on stream. There we go. I mentioned them before. There they are right now. University of Tampa, they were last year the number 1 team in the league. They went into pool play, won the first 2 games, and then were knocked out in overtime by Christopher Newport A complete and stunning upset. And it goes to show, do not care about the number next to your name. You can lose at any game in any period in this tournament. As Tampa found out the hard way last year. And how did they bounce back this year? They went undefeated and won the College Hockey South Championship. That's a great way to bounce back, considering they lost some senior class, and that some was highly productive last year, and they had a great freshman class, just kind of pick up the pieces and just tick off where they left off last year. So after a very disappointing end last year in the national tournament, losing in the third and final decisive game in pool play to CNU, they bounce back, go undefeated, and win the CHS title, knocking off South Carolina. I believe it was yesterday. They just recently knocked them off. Tampa has 11 guys or better. 11 guys or better that are a point per game, at least a point per game. So Tampa, right back to domination. It's just they got to shrug off last year and leave it in the distance. But at the same time, don't forget, anyone can beat anyone on any given day. And now, this is to be, I don't want to discredit Auburn and Newman, but, you know, again, I don't want to be too mean, but what a matchup this could be if Ramapo and Tampa go into the final day and the pool's up for grabs. And let me tell you something about Ramapo. They're number 14 right now. They finished the season 7-13 on the regular season. And what did they do? Going into the final weekends of the season, the top four in the Empire Conference make Empire Conference playoffs. And it was a lot that Farmingdale and Fairfield were going to make it. Quinnipiac not to make it. It just matter who's going to get 1 through 3. The 4 seed was up for grabs. Could have been Fordham, could have been Ramapo. Ramapo got in. And what did Ramapo do? They beat Farmingdale on this past Saturday, and then they knocked off Fairfield, the number 2 seed in the Empire, in overtime to win the Empire Conference Championship. They have this, I believe a top 3, maybe top 5. I'll keep it safe. I don't want to speak in too much of absolute, but I believe they're top 5 in strength of schedule. Their schedule is that difficult. And you want to talk about a team getting hot at the right time. Ramapo, goaltender Dennis McGarry, kind of up and down throughout the year. The last 5 games has been rock solid, right back to his form that he had last year. Eddie Dada, Trent Shanley, Rick Kimball, they held it down. Those 2 were first team All-Empire Conference. And then the big piece that was not there in the first half of the season, he came back to the team in the end of January. He was MVP of the national tournament last year. Christopher Dressler comes back, plays, I believe, 6 regular season games, has 11 points. Oh, and he got the overtime game-winning goal on yesterday to win the conference championship. So Ramapo, want to get hot at the right time? Now is the right time for Ramapo, as they are the 2nd seed in Pool C, but 14th seed overall in the league. Number 22 will go to Auburn, 11-8-4. They have wins against Alabama and a tie against Georgia this year. So, Auburn, again, I don't mean to disrespect you about a potential matchup between Tampa and Ramapo on the final day to decide the pool, but Auburn, very impressive, knocking off a very good Alabama team and tying a very good Georgia team. So they're right there. They could be a sleeper in that division as the 3 seed in the pool. And speaking of Alabama wound up winning the pool last year as a 3 seed. So Auburn can very much do the same. And then Newman University, 11-10-1. They have played with some of the better teams in Liberty and University of Delaware. And that same Delaware team wound up knocking out Newman in the most recent DVCHC playoffs. But Newman was not in the tournament last year, making an appearance this year. I remember in the when I was playing college, Newman had a very good ice program and a very good roller hockey program. I don't know how the roller hockey program is doing now. I haven't kept up with roller hockey, but I remember when I was playing, Newman had a very good roller team and a very good ice team. And they're getting back to form as they're representing now in the AAU National Championship. So take one last look here at Pool C. Tampa, Ramapo, Auburn, and Newman round out Pool C at the AAU National Championship. So we will wave goodbye now to Pool C. We'll get that off the screen, get me on a full screen now. And let's get Pool D there. As again, let me work on getting that up on the screen. There's Pool D. Share. Boom. Loading. Boom. Pool D. We have the top 2 teams in Pool D were in the championship game last year. So What a way to run it back. We'll start off with Binghamton University. They are the number 4 team within the league, 15-4-1 on the season. And there was only, I believe, scored less than, this stat I had to look at it twice when I wrote it down. They've only scored less than 4 goals once this whole season, Binghamton. Only scored less than 4 goals once. They have 9 guys over a point a game on their roster. They can put it in against anyone. They can score with the best. The problem here with Binghamton, I potentially see, is keeping the puck out of their net. That was a problem that wound up hurting them in the playoffs as Niagara Community College knocked out Binghamton in the UNY-CHL playoffs just recently. But Binghamton, they were the runner-up last year. They finished second. They had a close game against the champions, and the champions wound up pulling away in the third and putting away Binghamton. You ask, who's the champions? The defending champions, going back to the tournament, trying to reclaim a crown. Right there, the number 13 seed, Babson College, 15-5-1. They are back-to-back NEIHC champions. They recently won it again, knocking off Anna Maria College. Babson, great structure, great coaching. The back end with good goaltending from Tim Carpenter. He was goalie of the tournament last year. He's having another solid, putting it lightly, having another great season in net for Babson. Last year, Babson went in as the unknown, and by the end of it, we all knew about Babson College, as they'll be in it again, and they're going to have to try to go through Binghamton again 2 years in a row to try to move out of the pool. But that is if Tennessee and Alfred have something to say about it. So we'll start off with number 21, University of Tennessee, 12-9. They started off their season, I believe it was the second game of the year for them on September 16th, where they knocked off Georgia 6-0. A very impressive win, but then they wound up playing against Liberty, Alabama, and South Carolina throughout the year, and they failed to knock off any of those 3 teams. So for Tennessee, was that just like catching Georgia on a bad day? What Tennessee team are we going to see? This is the first time Tennessee has made the national tournament in 14 years. So had a very good year, 12-9 for the Vols. I wound up having one of their forwards. Again, I'm sorry if I'm blanking on the names on my podcast earlier in the year. I've talked to so many. I'm so sorry if I'm blanking on the names. But Tennessee, they can give anyone in this pool problems, and the team that's going to have to deal with Tennessee right off the bat is Babson. So Tennessee, first time in the national tournament in 14 years, your first game is against the defending champions. So that would be a great game to keep an eye out for on the first day of the pool play weekend. And it'll be rounded out by Alfred State, number 29 ranked team, 6-8 on the season. So not much games for them. And right off the bat, they're going up against one of the best teams in the league, one of the best teams in the upstate New York Conference in Binghamton, and they had no games this year against the upstate league. So it's going to be something new for Alfred State immediately to get a test of Binghamton. And with that Binghamton team I mentioned, you're going to have your hands full in terms of goal scoring. For Alfred, it will be key to weather the storm in the first period. Give yourself some breathing room going into the second, because you don't want to go into that first period intermission, look up, and you see a tall mountain, a 3-goal deficit, a 4-goal deficit, because Binghamton can score. As I mentioned, they've only scored less than 4 goals once, and they have 9 guys over a point a game. So that'll finish up Pool D. Let's basket in one more final time. Binghamton, Babson, Tennessee, and Alfred State to finish up Pool D. I feel like we've only been through 4 pools. I got like 50 more to go here. So let's get to them. So finally, we'll get Pool D off the screen. And I will get up Pool E now. Pool E, it's going to be led by a team I know a lot about because I call their games. A little teaser there. And there we go. Pool E. It will be kicked off by Farmingdale State College, the number 5 team in the league. They were the number 1 team in the Empire Conference. As I mentioned, they were upset in the first round by Ramapo this year in the playoffs, and they were also stunned last year in the final game of pool play by Bonnie's. That was a shooting back-and-forth game, high scoring. Bonnie's wound up knocking off Farmingdale State 7-5. Farmingdale, they're a team that's always there. They're always going to be one of the best teams in the league. They get production from lines. They can get production lines 1 through 4. The defense can, guys like Ted Valenti at the back end can step in and produce. He's a rookie of the year in the Empire Conference, the defenseman, Ted Valenti. They can play with anybody. They went this year, Farmingdale, 13-8-1. They had the hardest schedule in the league, Farmingdale. So they went well over 500 this year with the hardest schedule. So they can play with the best. They can even beat the best. But for Farmingdale, their biggest enemy going into this tournament up in March, so a couple more weeks, Farmingdale's biggest enemy is Farmingdale. And no, that was not a miscue on my speech there. Farmingdale's biggest enemy is Farmingdale themselves. They tend to beat themselves. So Farmingdale have the talent every single year, top to bottom, forward group, back end, goaltending. They are their own worst enemy, but they are really good, talented. Anyone can score. Anyone can step in, and they know what it's like to play in these big games because the program has been there constantly, and all year they've been playing key games within the Empire, playing teams like out of their conference in Babson. They went up to Elmira, got swept, but they went in shorthanded, a lot of guys injured, so maybe that was not the real Farmingdale team we saw, but they're going fresh coming up in a couple of weeks in March, and they start off Pool E as the number 5 team in the league. Up next, University of Delaware. They went 24, so 20 wins, 4 losses, and 2 ties. They got a great goaltender back there, and James Palmieri wound up winning one of the players of the month this year. They won the Delaware Valley Championship, as I just mentioned recently, covering one of the pools. They actually faced off against Farmingdale 3 times this year. 1 win, 1 loss, 1 tie. So who's going to get the better end? As is the chance this pool can come down to those 2 teams. Delaware last year had a very good season, but did not represent in the national tournament last year. So after having a good year last year and did not represent in the tournament last year, another great season for Delaware, which has a very good hockey program, whether it be any other divisions in their hockey ranks. So they'll be the number 12 team in AAU going into the AAU National Championship. Number 20, Kutztown University, the Golden Bears. They were in the tournament last year. They're coming back this year. 11-10 on the year. They have games against Farmingdale D3 team, which I believe they split. They played games against Fairfield and Fordham. So they know what it's like to go up against the Empire Conference. So they'll have to wait Kutztown because they'll open up a tournament against Delaware. They'll play their second game, that Saturday game. It will be Kutztown against Farmingdale. So Kutztown does have that experience going up against the Empire division, and they had that experience last year, so they know what it's like being in the national stage. And another team, so this final team, number 20, Georgia Tech, the Yellow Jackets. They won their pool last year, and then they were knocked out, I believe, in the quarterfinals. Quarterfinals, Georgia Tech. This year, kind of a step back this year. They were a premier team last year, one of the top-ranked teams. They folded number 28. They were under 500 this year in 10-15-1. They've only played 2 games outside of the CHS, the College Hockey South. 2 losses against Liberty. This pool is all outside of the CHS. They got 2 games against the Delaware teams, Delaware and Kutztown, and their first game right off the bat is against number 5, Farmingdale State College. Georgia Tech this year, they're led by one of the leading scorers within the AAU, the entire league, Matthew Connolly, 46 points. The next closest guy on Georgia Tech in points, behind Connolly's 46, is 19 points. So they're going to need depth. They're going to need a lot more guys to step up because Connolly is a great player. Had him on the podcast, 2 back-to-back seasons for Connolly, but you can't do it alone all season. You can't do it alone in this national championship. But just like what comes down, Georgia Tech had that championship experience going into this year after a good showing last year. I think this pool will be very competitive. I think it'll be one of the closest pools in terms of final score, in terms of the whole seeded game. I think if there's going to be a blowout, let's say, I think that blowout won't happen immediately in a game. I think maybe late stages of a third period, a team could pull away. I think this pool is going to be one of our most tightly contested pools, especially if it comes down to Delaware and Farmingdale State. Those teams have seen each other 3 times this year, and no one took the series. Actually, if we're going to go back to the first meeting they had, their tie, it was at home for Farmingdale. Farmingdale had a game-winning goal in overtime that was waved off. Controversially so if you were to X Farmingdale. So they believe they should have took the season series, but what a should coulda. They go 1-1-1. So if it comes to Delaware and Farmingdale, it's going to be a lot at stake here. Not just moving on, it's just bragging rights is another thing you got to consider. So one more time, we're going to take a look at Pool E. Farmingdale, number 5. Delaware, number 12. Kutztown, number 20. And Georgia Tech, number 28. So long, Pool E. We'll see you in a couple weeks as we will now move on to Pool F. Let me just work on pulling them up here. Screen, Pool F, share, loading, boom. Pool F. You got Fairfield, Quinnipiac, Cortland, and USF, the Bulls at number 27. So we'll kick it off with Fairfield University. They had the third hardest schedule in the entire AAU, 14-6-1 record. As I mentioned, one of the league's hardest schedules. And they are, like I mentioned with Farmingdale, because I have the luxury of watching a lot of their games, whether they're playing in Farmingdale. I got to watch them this weekend, calling games for the Empire Conference and just keeping up with the Empire Conference to begin with. This is a Fairfield team that is just deep, top to bottom. They got the Italians up front, Piticelli, Spaziante. Imagine a Capre. It's like one after another with the Italian names for Fairfield. They're led on the back end by their captain, Mark Vaughn, who just seems, I feel like every time I'm watching Fairfield play, just keeps getting clutch goals, as he got a big goal yesterday against Ramapo to cut the lead to 1. And then it was Cullen who tied the game against Ramapo midway through the third period. Fairfield, another great hockey program. They go toe-to-toe with the best. I believe they did not make it out of their pool last year because I believe Binghamton was in their pool, and Binghamton wound up winning that one. But Fairfield was right there with Ramapo, and Ramapo, that championship game yesterday, they picked their moments. They're very particular. Ramapo was quantity over quality, but Fairfield, arguably some could say, did play the better game. Fairfield played a very good game yesterday. Just they could not beat McGarry, and I think they made 2 costly mistakes. 2 of them wound up in the back of the net, and one of those costly mistakes was in overtime, where they let the best player on the one of the best players in the league, and Christopher Dressler, get wide open and have a 5-hole goal for the game winner. So minor mistakes by Fairfield yesterday wound up going to their detriment, and Ramapo took advantage, but still a very good Stags team. They'll be followed by the number 11 team, another Empire team in Quinnipiac, who kind of had, in terms of record, a step back from last year. They had a coaching change late in the season. They are 9-10-2 on the year, but the second hardest schedule in the AAU entire league, second hardest schedule. So number 1 was Farmingdale, 2 Quinnipiac, 3 Fairfield. Quinnipiac wound up where they were down 3-1 in the first game of the Empire Conference to Fairfield. 2 answered in the third, pushed it to double overtime, but then it was Spaziante for Fairfield winning in the semifinals. Quinnipiac is still a very good team. Brought back a similar group from last year. So that group is still intact. They know what it's like. They've been there last year. They play in a very difficult conference in the Empire. And they're in that last game of pool play Sunday, they're going to wind up playing an Empire Conference foe in Fairfield. Then you have Cortland at number 19. They were there last year. They won 9-11 this year. They did face off against Fairfield. That will be the second matchup. It will be Portland-Fairfield, but they did play Fairfield earlier on in the season. They lost 7-4. They are led up front. They have a 3-headed monster up front: Christopher Hammerley, Cole Haldane, and Zachary Milas. If I got the names, I'm mispronouncing the name. I'm sorry. I'm trying my best over here. It's a lot to keep up with. But Cortland, I got to watch them earlier in the season. They went down big in the beginning of the season to Farmingdale. I believe it was like 6-1. They wound up coming back and tying it and pushing it to overtime. They wound up losing. But Cortland, just because it's a safe lead against Cortland does not mean anything. They wound up beating Binghamton earlier in the season. It was one of Binghamton's few handful of losses was against Cortland. So Cortland plays in that tough upstate conference. So don't take a Cortland team lightly. So Cortland, the Red Dragons, sitting at number 19. They also have a very good hockey program up there in upstate New York. Number 27, USF, the Bulls, back in the tournament, a little bit lower than what they were last year. As last year, I don't remember the specific number they were ranked, but I remember they were the number 2 team in their pool, with Georgia, number 1 team, and Alabama was the 3 team. And USF, first game they played Alabama last year, Alabama beat them. USF went 16-11 on the year, and they had losses this year against FAU and Tampa. They played against the top teams in the AAU in the league, but not able to come out on the winning end, and they're going to be tested immediately by the number 6 team in the AAU in Fairfield University. So soak it in. Fairfield, number 6, Quinnipiac, number 11, Cortland, number 19, and University of South Florida, number 27. That's your Pool F. Read it and weep, as we are going to get to Pool G. And I mentioned Farmingdale's pool being tough. In my opinion, Pool G, take it for what it is, take it for a grain of salt, is going to be, I think, the toughest division. Last year, I said that about a division, and I think it was Ramapo's division. Ramapo cruised through the division, so I was wrong on that prediction. But Pool G, I think, is going to be a very competitive pool. As I just work on pulling it up, there's Pool G. I'm giving a voice around here. A lot of talking here. A lot of talking. So there you have it. Pool G. I think this is going to be the toughest pool. And Alabama comes in again as the 3rd seed in the pool, but we'll get to Crimson Tide in a second. Liberty. We'll kick it off. Number 7, Liberty went 16-5. They started the season losing the first 2 games of the year. They were 0-2. They then proceeded to win 11 straight games. Every game they played against the College Hockey South this year, they won. So they swept the CHS this year, Liberty University. And they got 2 teams in the South. They got South Carolina and Alabama. So they have a taste of the South this year, and they're going to get them in Pool G this year. They knocked off, it was Tennessee and Georgia Tech. Those were the 2 teams. I believe they went 2-0 and 2-0 against both Georgia Tech and Tennessee. Liberty last year was kind of a team that was in the middle of the pack in terms of the rankings, and they, along with any other, were expecting a lot out of Liberty last year, and I believe they only won 1 game last year in pool play, and they were bounced early as they were in the Babson division. They were in Buff State division, and I don't remember the other team in that division, but I think Liberty only won 1 game, so a disappointing showing last year, and they recovered this year, going 16-5, the number 7 team representing the Atlantic Coast Collegiate Hockey League strongly. And again, Atlantic Coast is one of the league that has not decided a champion yet. It's it's the only league we haven't had a conference champion yet, as their playoffs kick off this weekend. As the Empire was Ramapo, upstate was Niagara, down south was Tampa. The New England League was absent back-to-back years, and Delaware Valley Conference was Delaware. So Liberty kicks off this division. Number 10 and Pool G will be University of South Carolina, the Gamecocks, home of the best alternate jersey in college hockey. No doubt about that. They won the poll. They won the poll, and in my opinion, give it a grain of salt, best alternate jerseys, that black and red with Cox right across the middle. Good jersey. They are 22-2 on the year. They lost the CHS finals just this past weekend to Tampa, and that was a game that was close going into the 3rd period, and Tampa wound up pulling away in that final frame. But the thing is with South Carolina, they are 22-2 in the year, a phenomenal record. But when you look at strength of schedule, you got to keep scrolling to find South Carolina. Not a difficult schedule for the Gamecocks. They do have wins, though, against FAU and Georgia. And also, they were a goal away last year in the semifinals from knocking off Babson and going to the championship game to take on Binghamton. It was a 2-1 game they lost to Babson in the semifinals. Babson ended up winning that 2-1 and beating Binghamton in the final. South Carolina was right there in the thick of things. They are a great team again this year, as you see them at number 10, and they will be representing in Pool G. Now, the Crimson Tide, 16-6-1 on the year, number 18 in the AAU rankings. They won 3rd place in the CHS playoffs. They beat Georgia. Yes, it was Georgia in the 3rd place game. They are led once again by Max Avaloya. Again, I think I got that name right. I haven't said it in over a year. So, Max, I think I got that name right this time. First time I didn't get it right. I think it's Savaloya. But, yep, he's their leading goal scorer, point getter again, back to best seasons for Max. I believe he made first team or second team all-tournament last year. This is a big, crucial piece in that push that Alabama made last year. They wound up knocking off USF and Alabama. I believe they swept the whole pool last year. They went 3-0 and won their pool last year. So Alabama, you see them at number 18. You see them at number 3 in the pool. It was the very similar situation last year. So don't take that number 3 seed in the pool, and don't take that number 18 seed very lightly. And then we got Fordham, number 26 ranked in the AAU, 9-12 on the year. They have wins over Quinnipiac and Ramapo this year. They also come from behind overtime loss against Farmingdale. They have 4 guys over a point a game. Fordham has that exposure against a very difficult Empire, the Fairfields, the Ramapos, the Quinnipiacs, the Farmingdales. So Fordham, the record might not show it, but they can give you a tough game. They play with the best teams of the best this year. Like I said, they've even knocked off 2 better teams in Quinnipiac and Ramapo. So a very respectable year this year for Fordham. And that concludes Pool G, which I think will be the toughest pool of them all so far. So I think Farmingdale's pool is going to be competitive. I also think Pool G is going to be the most competitive. I hope I'm right, because I don't want them wrong back-to-back seasons. And a big thing here, I mentioned how you don't want to take teams lightly going into this tournament. You don't want to get fooled by records. You want to get fooled by past performances. You don't want to get fooled by the number next to each team. You see Liberty is 7. You see Fordham is number 26. Don't be deceived by that whatsoever. Another thing it's not about being fooled or deceived. You got to be mindful of in this tournament is recovery. More than likely than not, you got to win 6 games in a row on stage. Just like what Babson did. Binghamton was 1 game away from winning 6 games in a row. They went 5-1 because they lost the final game. Is recovery. Not always about the best team. It's not about the most skilled team. It's about who's the freshest team. Who's feeling the best when that first period puck drop starts. Recovery is very, very important. Last year, we had a state-of-the-art facility run by Dr. Jeff Poplarski. He'll be back again this year to keep the players healthy, work on any ailments, keep them ready after the game and ready before the game, and make sure you're maintaining your body. Keep your bodies healthy. Eat a lot of fruit after the games. I don't want to get into specifics. Who am I to talk about recovery, rest, and healing, whatnot? So Dr. Jeff Poplarski will be there, more than happy to tell you everything you need to know about rest, recovery, healing, and preparation in terms of dieting and in terms of just stretching, things to do and not to do before and after a game. And with this pool, I feel like recovery is going to be very important. I think, again, it's going to be a tough pool. So that is Pool G. Liberty, Gamecocks, Crimson Tide, and Fordham to finish out Pool G. So now we'll move on to our last pool of the National Division, Division 2. So Pool H we're getting to will be the final pool in the Division 2 ranks. Excuse me, I have an itch on my nose there. Was it Pool H? So after this pool, we will then get to 2 in Division 3. All right, so before we get to Division 3, let's finish up Division 2. So there you have it. Pool H. Buffalo, University at Buffalo, my bad, because it's Buff State and University at Buffalo. FAU, Cornell, and Emory-Riddle. Kicking off, the Bulls, University at Buffalo, number 18, and that number 8 spot and number 9 spot. It's a great spot to be in terms of the rankings, but it's not the ideal spot because it's not like if you're the 5 rank, you might have you might be playing a team back in there in the high teens. 8 and 9 are going to go at it in the pool. 8 and 9 are going to go at it. And it's kicked off by University of Buffalo. They went 18-5-1, led by leading point getter Matt Kulo. Thomas McCarron right behind him at 33 points. So two-headed monster there on the forward group. University of Buffalo had a very good hockey program past couple of years. Last year, a big step back. Had a coaching change this year, and it was night and day, apples to oranges. Big turnaround for the Bulls, and a very good showing this year at number 8. Number 9, FAU. They were there last year. I believe they lost the final and decisive pool play game on that Sunday night to Georgia Tech. I could be wrong on that. I think I got that one though, right? But I think Georgia Tech knocked out FAU. And FAU, again, last year was a top 10 team, one of the favorites, and were bounced in pool play. And again, they will be a top 10 team and one of the favorites. They're led by leading defenseman point getter in the AAU. 54 points for David Israel. Matthias Weir, again, another phenomenal year with 43 points. Jacob Freeman, 48 points. So they can get it done on the forward group. And then you have David Israel on the back, who was upper echelon in terms of defensive point production. Again, 2nd year in a row for David Israel as the Owls went 14-4 on the year. Cornell, Cornell, the Big Red, number 17, 12-6-3 on the year. They were represented at the Elmira tournament. They went 1-2 in that tournament. They wound up tying Binghamton this year. So another team that has had a lot of exposure playing against some of the best teams in one of the best conferences in the Upstate League. They played against the Niagaras, the Binghamtons, the Bonnies, and then they played against some of the Empire team and the Elmira tournament. And they're going to have to go through one of the upstate teams at University at Buffalo to get past Pool H. And it'll be rounded out by a team in Embry-Riddle, the Eagles, number 25. They were 15-8 on the year. They did have 2 losses this year against FAU. So FAU and Embry-Riddle will duke it out in the second meeting because, again, it's 1 versus 4. So the first day it will be Buffalo against Embry-Riddle, FAU against Cornell. And then the second day, day 2, game 2, day 2, will be FAU and Embry-Riddle. So FAU is going to go into that game with a lot of confidence knowing we knocked them off twice, and I believe it was 2 convincing wins for the Owls against the Eagles. But Emory, they have not played outside of the College Hockey South. So they're going to get 2 games in the pool against Upstate, against the Big Red Cornell, and they're going to pick it off against University at Buffalo. So that will wrap up our final pool of Division II, the national division. So we have University at Buffalo, FAU, Cornell, and Embry-Riddle. I want to ask that Tool. I had him on the podcast. I'm like, why is it at Buffalo and Buff State? Like, what's the difference? You didn't know. No one knows. So I could probably answer the question, but I don't know the difference between University at Buffalo and Buff State, what the disparity, the difference is. But not a big deal. Moving on. So that's Pool H. So we got through all of our pool within the Division II National Division here in the AAU. So now, say goodbye to Pool H. We will now go into Division III, the American Division, going into Pool A. So again, for this division, 2 pools, 8 teams, and they will start their tournament a day after Division II starts. Division II starts on Friday, March 10th. Division III will start Saturday, March 11th. So again, I got an itch. Let me work on getting Pool A up. There we go. Hold on, loading, on stream. St. John Fisher will be the number 1 team in the American Division going into nationals. St. John Fisher, 19-7-1. They won the Division III Upstate Conference Championship. So this past weekend, St. John Fisher was Division III champions up in upstate New York. 7 guys over a point a game. Ryan LaCourcy was 6th in the AAU in total, AAU, not just Division III, total, D1 and D2 and D3, with 6th in points, 54 total points. He was 13th in goals with 25, and Jack Chapman, fellow forward, not too far behind him in points, but Chapman was ahead of him in goals. Chapman was 10th in the league in goals with 26. So St. John Fisher, a lot of power up front. They'll be the number 1 team. And University of Tampa's Division III team. Last year, this U Tampa team surprised some people. They were the only D3 team in the tournament last year. And right at the bat, first game, they upset Division II Quinnipiac last year. So Tampa was right there, and they wound up getting knocked out of pool play by a goal differential. So they wound up making it right to the end of a tiebreaker, which was goal differential. And just like the Division II team for Tampa, Tampa's D3 team undefeated, 21-0. They had a goal differential of plus 167, and they had 3 games decided by 3 goals or less. So only 3 times this year did they win a game by 3 goals or less. That just goes to show why that plus 167 goal differential is there. It was dominant with the Division III ranks. Then you have the number 16, University of New Haven Chargers out of the Empire Conference. They went 10-6-1 by leading goal scorer and point getter Peter Riccitelli, who had the privilege of watching yesterday as New Haven was defeated in the Empire Black Division Conference Championship game by Farmingdale State D3. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We're going to see Farmingdale State Division III in a little bit. They knocked off Sacred Heart to earn a shot in that championship game. They knocked off Sacred Heart 4-0 on Saturday. But then it happened at the end of the third period in Sacred Heart game, which they were up 4-0. And then it kind of trickled into the late stages of the championship game, which they were knocked off by Farmingdale State, is the penalty bug. Yes, in that first game, Sacred Heart were the ones that were initiating it. But then I believe in that championship game, New Haven, they played a late Saturday night semifinal game in which they had a long third period due to the game getting very chippy. And they kind of went into an early start that Sunday championship game, kind of banged up, a quick turnaround for the Chargers, and they wind up getting knocked off 5-1 by Farmingdale. So I think that had a lot to do with a tough showing in that championship game for New Haven, but still a very good season for the Chargers, 10-6-1, the University out of Connecticut. And then Pool A in the American Division will be finished off by Salisbury University, the number 7 seed, the Eagles. They were in the tournament last year and the national tournament last season, so they're back at it again in Division 3 at the time. 7-12-1. Jonathan Schwartz led the team in goals with 27, as well as in points with 36. So that will round out Pool A in the American Division. St. John Fisher, University of Tampa Spartans, University of New Haven Chargers, and then Salisbury University Seagulls. So my notebook over here is acting up. Like pages won't turn for some reason. Trying to multitask over here. So that'll be Pool A, as I will get Pool A off the screen, and we will finish up our final pool. So we've gone through all of them. We got one more left to go, and it will be Pool B in Division 3. And it will be kicked off by a familiar name. Niagara's D2 team was the top of the pool. Niagara's D3 team will also be the top of their pool. Niagara went 13-5-1 on the year, the number 2 team in the American Division. They have a great hockey program spanning all club divisions, all AAU divisions, and as well as NCAA, as they, I think just this year or recently, they became an NCAA program, Niagara University. Again, quote me on that. I'm just pretty sure on that one. So Niagara, very good season. They've had some games against Bonnies and Binghamton, I believe, this year. So they had played a lot of exposure against Division II teams. They know what it takes to play against the best of the best. And they're going to be tested because they got to go up against the Black Division Empire Conference champions and Farmingdale State College's D3 team. So there's a lot of talent with that Farmingdale State organization within D2 and D3. And a couple of guys in D3, not a couple, just a handful, I believe, have had some exposure playing with the D2 team. One of their defensemen going up to the D2 team, Daniel Rotan. Their defenseman, Nick Bentrowicz, I believe, got a call up briefly with the D2 team, but he's back with the Division 3 team. They are a big, tall, heavy-hitting team. That, by the way, they can also put the puck in the net a lot. So Farmingdale team, they're going to play nitty-gritty. They're going to get in your face and also score a lot of goals. They're a big group in that Division 3 team. Then we got number 5 seed, Widener University, the Pride, 8-2 on the year. They have a win this year against an Empire Conference team that Farmingdale State played against in Hofstra. So Widener has played against an Empire team, so they know they've seen that conference. They have it. That's a big thing going this tournament. If you're isolated against one group, one conference for all the year, it's not going to kill you. But again, you would like to see some other conferences throughout the season, opposed to kind of just getting blasted potentially by a new team from a new state, from a new conference. So Widener has a win against Hofstra this year, 7-2. So very convincing for the Pride. And then finishing it up, number 8, Florida Southern College, the Mocs. 14-7 on the year. So a very good record for Florida Southern on the year. The Mocs, first appearance in the AAU National Championship. So that will finish up the final pool in the American Division. Niagara University, the Purple Eagles, number 2. Farmingdale State, number 3, Rams. Number 5, Widener University Pride. And number 8, Florida Southern College, the Mocs, representing the College Hockey South. So we went through them all. A through F in the National Division. A through B, so play 2 in the American Division. I feel like just yesterday I was talking about the national tournament back in September when I was starting up the podcast to begin the season. And here we are just 2 weeks away. And I'm telling you, it's going to be a great time, a great experience for fans, family, players, coaches, executives alike. It was great time last year. And again, this year, it's only going to be upping the ante. Players are going to get an experience that they've never seen before. It feels like March Madness, but for hockey. It's going to be a great time for everyone. Players, I hope I get to meet a lot of you, see you throughout the tournament. I'll be there calling games. I'll be there doing a live podcast. The CHF Overtime podcast will be live at the tournament. Players will get a chance to be interviewed by Siobhan Nolan, just like last year, before, potentially, definitely after a game, potentially during the game, during intermission. Player of the games will be awarded. Guys from Howie, guys from Verbero will be there. So something to look forward to coming up in the next 2 weeks. It's going to be a crazy weekend. And then after that first weekend, we're going to wind it down to the final teams. And it's going to be a fight to the finish to crown a new AAU national champion in both divisions. Can Babson run back and go back-to-back championships? Or are we going to have a new face at the top of the mountain of the national division? And then the American division, we will be crowning our first champion within the American division, Division 3. So, almost an hour long we went. That will do it for the CHF Overtime podcast on this Monday and potentially snowy night here on Long Island, New York, where I am from. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for listening on Twitter as well as YouTube. Make sure to follow us on Twitter, subscribe on YouTube, follow on Instagram as well. Again, Jordan DeLuciano, thanks for joining me tonight. I will see you all in 2 weeks at the AAU National Championship. Good night, everyone, and see you in 2 weeks.